Hello, wonderful people. It is Mark here. I hope you're doing well. And today, I just wanted to give responses to 10 of what I would say were the most common conservative LGBT phobic arguments that get thrown against our community. Now, it is not essential for any of us to have these debates or these arguments. So if you don't feel confident in having these conversations with people, then you don't have to. But for those of us who do feel comfortable or would like to give some kind of response, I hope that these answers will help you to do that. So the first one is the idea that this woke agenda or queer agenda is somehow confusing or too complicated for children to understand. So I think oftentimes the best way to respond to this is just to highlight the fact that actually it is the heteronormative indoctrination of children which is the confusing thing. And actually, most of the time, LGBT education is actually more of a simplification of what they're already confused by. So I'll give you an example. If you look at heteronormative society and what is expected of children, you look at girls have to have long hair and boys have to have short hair. That's not explained. There's no practical purpose to that, but it's just expected. Okay? And they can expect to be ridiculed or, excluded or questioned or probed as to why, if they fall outside of that. Boys in blue, girls in pink. There's no reason for that. Nobody ever explains why that is the case, but it's expected and there are consequences if you fall outside of it. How boys and girls have to walk and talk and behave, the hobbies and activities that they're supposed to engage in, all have stringent expectations and segregation. But it's never actually explained why that is the case or what the utility of those rules are. So you have all of that, and then you look at the kind of queer, perhaps, way of educating children, and it's more about saying, well, you're a person, okay, you're a person, you can do what you love to do, and that's okay. Really, it's about saying, look at what we teach children already and how utterly confusing that is, and let's see the woke agenda as actually a real simplification of that. So that's the first one. The second one is this idea that in some way being LGBT is unnatural. So people say, being gay is unnatural, it's this aberration. So the way to handle this particular argument is to let people know that the way we learn nature is completely false. And if you actually look at ecology, if you look at the natural world, you will find that homosexuality and bisexuality is very, very prevalent. So it's not true at all to say that being LGBT is unnatural. It is completely natural. The thing that is most unnatural that we don't really see in nature is monogamous marriage. Stuff like that is really not natural. So the third one is this idea that, you've got your rights now, so what are you complaining about? This is one that I hear quite a lot, particularly in countries where we have won some of our rights. The way that I would normally respond to that is, yes, that's great. But violent hate crime towards LGBT people, for example, in the UK, in the US, in a lot of Europe, is actually rising every single year. Okay, so it is more and more dangerous to be openly LGBT in countries even that have made progress in terms of equal marriage and so on. Okay, so violence is increasing. I think that kind of counters this idea that a lot of people have in their heads that things are getting better now, things are fine now. No, they're not. And the second thing is that conservative parties, conservative movements are constantly trying to repeal any progress that we've made. And you can see that in the US, in the UK, in Spain, in Italy, in Greece, in Hungary, in so many countries, you see these political movements which are trying desperately to repeal. So it's not a time that we can just stop. So the next one is really around this idea that particularly trans people in public restrooms and changing rooms and stuff like that are this kind of threat to women, cis women. And the thing that I would usually highlight in this regard is that, of course, women's safety is of paramount importance, and I think we should be fighting to make sure that women are protected. And the way to do that is to improve the laws, improve the legislation which protects women from sexual assault. You know, in the UK, for example, there are really, really lacking laws. It is very, very difficult to convict somebody of sexual assault, and that really needs to be looked at. And so that's what you do. But you look at the groups and the people who are making such a fuss about trans people in women's restrooms. They are almost always the people who are trying to frustrate progress on legislation protecting women, on rape laws, on all of the kind of education, educating men and boys about consent, educating men and boys about respect, and all of these things. They're always the ones who are trying to frustrate that, and those are the things which actually threaten women in the real world. So the next one is this idea that in some way the T in LGBT is causing all of the problems, and why can't we just have gay rights, and this kind of trans thing is like a distraction and it's ruining everything and it's going too far, right? So the way to approach this one, and it might even be kind of members of the LGBT community who are even saying this, what I would say is, two things. First of all, look at the attacks that are happening on trans people right now. Look at what people are saying about trans people. This is the kind of stuff that was being said about gay people not so long ago. Okay? They are bringing down the society. They are degenerate. They are promiscuous. They are a threat to children. They're indoctrinating children. We shouldn't have books or education about them in schools. They shouldn't be in the military. They shouldn't be in changing rooms. All of these things. This was exactly what people were saying about gay people not so long ago. So it's really just a continuation of the same thing. And so if you think that as a gay or bisexual person that you're now safe and that trans people are causing the problem, they will come for you. The other thing is that trans people have been part of the community forever. You can't really disassociate the LGB from the T. Trans people were there at Stonewall. Trans people have been instrumental in building pride, in building the LGBT community. Like, trans people have always been there. So it's not this new thing. It's not this add-on. Okay, trans people have been fighting for the rights that you now enjoy. Okay, so if you appreciate any kind of LGBT rights at all, then you have to also stand up for trans people. So that's that one. The next one is, oh, and by the way, if you would like more information on the trans kind of arguments in particular, then check out this video, which should be popping up here. I go into a lot more detail there. The next one is the idea that in some way being gay or being queer is not Christian, or it's not something that God would approve of. So the way that I would normally approach this with Christians is to say, what did Jesus say about homosexuality? What did Jesus say about LGBT people? Jesus didn't say anything, and wasn't recorded as saying anything about this topic. Okay, Jesus did say a lot about a lot of things, Okay, one of the things that he spoke the most about, he was the most clear and the most passionate about, was violence. Right? Jesus said, if somebody strikes you on one cheek, turn the other cheek and let him strike you again. Right? He was a radical pacifist. He spoke to Simon Zealots when he wanted to rise up against the Romans and said, no, there is never an excuse for violence, not in self-defense, not even if you're fighting oppression, not even for a military objective. There's no excuse ever for violence. Love your enemy, love your neighbor. Jesus was a radical pacifist. Okay, that's something he spoke extensively on. So most people who are coming for you on this topic will no doubt support the military. It's normally what conservatives do. So the question that I would always ask is, if you are a Christian, a follower of Christ, okay, why are you not going and protesting against war? Why are you not going to people in the military and saying, lay down your weapons? Why are you not fighting for peace? Why are you not a radical pacifist? Why are you not fighting against the death penalty? You know, all of these things. Why are you not doing that? Because that's what Jesus actually said. Why are you fighting against something that Jesus never, ever spoke about? The next thing is about marriage. So a lot of people say, oh, well, it's fine for people to be gay, but I don't think they should be married because it's redefining the concept of marriage. I would normally ask them why. And almost always they will say, well, marriage is between a man and a woman. And I will say, well, why? And they will say, well, because men and women can have children and marriage is ultimately about children. And I say, well, so shouldn't we change the law to say that anyone who doesn't have children is not allowed to get married? And they'll say, well, no, we shouldn't do that. And well, that's changing the definition of marriage according to your definition. The next one, which kind of leads on from marriage, is about adoption. Yeah, people say, okay, well, marriage is okay, but, you know, I really don't think that same-sex couples should be able to adopt children. Normally, this is for one of two reasons. Either they think that they're not appropriate to be parents in general, which there is no evidence for at all. In fact, there is heaps of evidence to show that same-gender couples are perfectly good parents. But the second reason is sometimes because they say, oh, well, if you have same-gender parents, then you're going to end up growing up as gay or, you know, indoctrinated in some way. Once again, what you can say is, well, there's absolutely no evidence for that whatsoever. All of the research done shows that that is not the case. Plain and simple. And the final one is this idea that in some way queer people are promiscuous, right? That we are these immoral people who are leading to the downfall of civilized society as we know it. So LGBT people are not more promiscuous. We do not have more sexual partners or more casual sex than cis straight people. We just don't. The one group which actually does is cis gay men. And I think the problem is that a lot of people see the LGBT community as a whole as just cis gay men, because that's the kind of stereotype. This is a misrepresentation, and so that's where people get the wrong idea. The other interesting thing about cis gay men is that the research shows that the reason why they often have like more so-called promiscuous sexual activities is because for so long they have not been able to have stable, recognized, loving relationships, right? So you can't ban people from having stable, recognized, loving, safe relationships and then blame them for having non-stable, non-safe, promiscuous relationships, right? And what we find in the research is that the more gay men are able to access education about safe sex, you know, to have recognized partnerships, civil partnerships and marriage, and, you know, loving families and all the rest of it, more acceptance leads to gay men having less sexual partners and less promiscuous behaviors. So that's really the way that I would approach that one. And then finally, this whole idea about, you know, society degenerating into chaos. Look at the countries around the world that have the most repressive laws against LGBT people. Yeah, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Somalia, Pakistan, Afghanistan. Are these countries which are doing great? Are these countries where, like, you would look at them and be like, oh, that's, you know, a really, really great country that I would want to live in? Now look at the countries that have the most acceptance, right? Countries like Canada, Ireland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway. Yeah, these are countries which are doing amazingly well. Germany, right? Amazingly well. These are countries which are wealthy. These are countries which are, you know, really quite good place to live. They have a high standard of living. So this idea that more acceptance leads to the downfall of society, actually the complete opposite of the truth. So anyway, I hope that's been helpful. Do you have other ones? Please let me know. Do you have other questions or other arguments that you would like me to create responses for? Let me know in the comments. Let me know, have you dealt with any of these before? Has this been helpful? Let me know what you think. I would love, love, love to know. And I wish you all the best of luck dealing with all these kind of conversations. I am with you always, and I hope to see you again soon. As I say, look out to these videos for more information on trans issues, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.